operating and all. For C code is a little bit high level language. Okay, so you can do it. You can do write in assembly. You can write in C also. Okay. But if you have a good understanding of this, you will have better control. You can optimize your code, and so it's a good thing to have to understand this. That's why we'll go to C after this. But by that time, you'll be aware of the registers and the underlying things.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So that's why, to increase your depth. Okay. So you'll have a good depth. Nothing beyond that. Okay. If it is 0. Yeah, so again, based on some carry, whether the carry is there or not. So this is again my location. So based on the location and all, so this is kept here. Load. So from this space, from this address, you put it to R30, and then when you do TST, you say that you'll try to understand the flags, the conditions of all the flags by testing the operation, what happened based on R30. And then you can just, on this, you just check the 0 flag here. Okay, so have nobody gone through chapter 3 or 4, or is it, or some people have gone through this?
No, sir.
No, how can you say that nobody has gone through this? You're the only person, right? Have you talked to others?
From my perspective, I'm
Yeah,
telling about myself.
you're one of how many people? You're one of 60-70 people, right? So fine, just I'm trying to understand this. Okay, but yeah, so I think this is something somebody had asked. So yeah, this is the branch short jump. So this is about the relative jumps. So yeah, one interesting thing I think somebody had asked about this is that you start, let's say that let's say that you go you go to N2 here. Okay, what is your N2? Or let's say you go to N2. Yeah. So here you go to N, from N1 to N1. So so the difference in the location, the location address is what is to be added to the relative. You don't have to give the entire address to where you want to go after this. But one more thing is, it always points, the program counter always points to the next instruction. Okay, so because of that, you have to add, you have to consider that. Okay, so let's say that I am here, so I'll be always pointing, I'm executing in this line, I'll be always pointing to this the next location. So based on that, you have to take the relative address. Short branch addresses. Verify the calculation backwards for this. Yeah, so this was the forward. I've talked about the backward also, that so this is what I was talking about. So typically you can see that you can make a small mistake saying that here, suppose you are in line number, let's say that you are in line 6, between 6 and between 6 here. So which means the displacement number of -3. Okay, so the carry is dropped, is the address of the label again. So here in this again thing, the address is 3 here, but you actually, from again, you go to again here, right? So here it is 5, but actually when you're executing here, you're actually pointing to the next, you're pointing to the next address. So that's why you have to add you have to have -3, so that from 6 you go to 3, because even though you're executing here, because the program counter, the address that is loaded in the program counter is that of the next next address. So this is what is explained here. And then there are something called unconditional jumps. Okay, so they are of little bit higher sizes, and they higher bytes typically. So this is the format of this unconditional jumps, JMP, long jump. Okay, so yeah, you should go through this. Okay, relative jump. So this is similar to this, the relative thing, and then this is the indirect jump, in which you access through this register. So typically it is this 16-bit register, and then whatever are the contents of the register, that is the location of the address where you would like to go. Okay, call instructions and stack. So yeah, the stack is again important thing. So call in this 4-byte instruction, 10 bits are used for the opcode and the other 22 bits are. So this is a big. So this is a yeah. So this is a 4-byte instruction. So 10 bits for the opcode part, 22 bits for the address. So mind you, this is again the full address of the target subroutine where you would like to go. Okay. And stacks again, maybe I'll just so this is stacks are like heaps. Okay, so it's like you suppose there is some program here, and then you there is a call, you call some from one program to another, you call to I'll just give you some example here, maybe here it will be given. Yeah, so this is push and pop. Yeah, so let's say that you call, let's say you call the delay. So suppose that there was a program which was being executed, and then you call delay, and it was the moment you were already in this line, it was already pointing to the next instruction. So it'll store this address in the stack, and then the program counter will be the old value of the program counter, which was this pointing to this line. It will be stored in the stack, and the next the current value, the future or um, the future value of the program counter will be nothing but will be the delay. So delay is again the um, address of this yeah, the delay will be the address of this call subroutine, and then it will be executing. And once this ret is there, once this ret is there, again you go back. Then what will happen is you'll read from the stack the old value of the program counter which was stored there. You read it back, and because ret, it needs to know where it should return, so it should always return to the place where it was, where it was supposed to be, right? So here it will again come back. So again it will go to the back part. So from back it will again go back here. Okay, so this is the stack. So the stack is again used mostly for this storing the addresses whenever you call a subroutine. Okay, the addresses of the program counter which it should when it will return to that. Okay, so here you have this yeah, so role of the stack. So I'll just mention that. So there are two options. So, and this is the stack pointer. Okay, the stack pointer typically for higher versions of AVR, it will have 2 bytes. So this is the SPL will store the lower byte, SPH will store the higher byte, and 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 this will keep on getting updated. Okay, so like it's like here, this is the stack pointer, and it gets updated from the reverse. So whenever there are more and more data or addresses being pushed, so the address to which it will be pointing to will keep on reducing. Okay, so that means the stack pointer value will keep on decrementing based on the, because the stack pointer holds the address of the place which, so it's like last in first out thing. Okay. So this is some example to tell you the stack and stock pointer registers. So in this case you're just initializing. So mind you, again, this high end RAM and low end RAM, can anybody tell me why these are used if somebody has gone through this? Why do we have this high end RAM and low end RAM end and low RAM end? Anybody who has gone through chapter 3? Hello. Hello. I'll just ask somebody. Let's say, okay, Anubhav Savoth, maybe I'll ask him.
Yes,
Can you
sir.
tell me
Yes,
what?
sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Why?
that's your doubt, sir. I'm not sure about it.
Yeah. So this is an important thing again. See, what happens is, you see this stack. It it is stored in a reverse. It is stored. The keep on the moment there is increment of value stored on it, it reduces. Okay, it keeps on the address to which it points to reduces. So if so by default it is 0. Okay, so it should not be a doubt because it's clearly mentioned here. Okay, it's clearly mentioned here. So whenever it is powered up, the SP register points to the value 0. Now imagine that if from the beginning, if it is 0 by default, then the moment you push more contents on it, then it will try to decrement. So that cannot be possible, right? You cannot go beyond below 0. Okay, it's clearly mentioned here. I think you have not studied, so that's why it's here. It is clearly mentioned. So we must initialize the SP at the beginning of this so that it points to somewhere in the internal. So SP is again, actually the stack is part of this static RAM, right? I think it was in chapter 1 or 2, in which there is some memory called the static RAM. So there is some IO map memory, and then before that there is some general purpose registers. So we are not touching that. So this will be actually used. The stack is actually uses this static RAM. Okay, and this static RAM. So what do we do is we put it at the end, so that whenever we access it, the memory will keep on decrementing. So that's why it is very essential to initialize this to the last location, so that the moment you keep on heaping or keep on pushing these contents, the memory to which it will be occupying, the memory locations will keep on reducing one by one. So that is the reason. Okay, and then this SPH and SPL will store the values of that address. Okay, so initially you have not done any operation, you have not pushed anything. So that's why by default it is the last location, that is the end of the RAM. This is just for safety. You may not be always having the end of the RAM. You may use some high value of the RAM. So here in this case, you're just using some extreme address of the RAM, which is the last end of the RAM, but you may not use this. You can use some intermediate value also if you feel that the number of nested loops or number of loops are not much. Okay, so you can use this. So this is about the initialization of the stack pointer to point to the to some memory part in the static RAM. Now let us do some operations. Let's say that I am loading this with I'm loading R31, some general purpose register with 0, and similar to this and this. These are the locations. Then these are the locations, and then what I'm doing is, let's say because of some call or something that is not mentioned in that program, I am trying to store this. I am trying to store it. So what happens when I'm storing it? So nothing, you see that stack pointer is not affected when I'm doing other operations, right? It will not get affected. It will remain the same. But the moment I do some push operation, push means I'm trying to store it. I'm trying to push something in some memory. So let's say that there was I tried to call some other subroutine in which I have to store the value of the program counter that I was about to go to in the next instruction. So what I'll do is I'll store it. The moment I'm storing it, let's say that the moment there is some push operation happening, the stack pointer will now point to a lower memory address. Lower in this case, lesser memory address. Okay, in this case it shows higher, but actually from F it is going to E. So that is how the stack pointer is designed to. It will keep on decrementing its memory location pointer. And further again there is a push, then again it will point to the next it will point to the next memory location. Okay, so this is, again you see that in the normal conventional operation it will not get affected. Again, when there is a pop, so this pop might happen when you're trying to return to that from that subroutine. So you need to understand that what was the value of the program counter which you wanted to go to before the call subroutine. So what you'll do is you read it. The moment you read it, so it will be dumped into some other general purpose register. So this memory will be emptied, and then it will go back to the previous value of 85E. Okay. Similarly, again, when you do pop operation, that means you're reading the content of the address. So these are again addresses, right? This 20, 66, these are all addresses. So let's say when you're reading it again, it will again go down. Okay. So this is the stack. This is about the stack pointer. Okay. So so what happens is the moment you do some call operation, you push something into, you push the address on the stack, which enables it to decrement the memory pointing address. Similarly, after you are done with the call subroutine, after you have executed the call subroutine, you'd like to go back, right? So when you try to go back to the after the call subroutine, you would what? You would again try to read it. The moment you read it from that stack, so you're freeing the memory, and the stack pointer again gets incremented. Okay. So this is about it. Cost instruction and the role of the stack. Okay, so this is the and the role I have just mentioned it here. Yeah. So okay. So this is again suppose you'd like to execute this bits by the way, if I see let me tell you this, we have 8 to 9 hours of lectures class each day. Along with it, to read chapter daily is very hectic. I understand that, but this is a 3-level course. Okay. And can you please give us at max 1 chapter per class to read at our own? It's not about, then we have to restructure the class then, because this is okay. Let's see how much is possible. Okay. Because see, what I'm saying is these are essential chapters, and then we see that there are 4 professors. Okay, all 4 of them will be teaching subjects, and you understand, right? So we have limited classes. So let's say that there are like 33 classes, or let's say maximum there will be 36. So each of us will be getting 12 classes. For second years, almost everything is new. Yeah, I understand. Everything is new. Is the syllabus whole book? No, it's not. No. This is just part of it. Actually, it is just a part of it. The syllabus is not the whole book. Okay, it is a part of it, but it is a very, very important part of it. Using this, you'll be able to program things. You'll be able to operate a microcontroller. You'll be able to do certain things, just like you're seeing it here, right? That sending, you can blink an LED every with some time delay between each other. This is just a small part of it. You can do plenty of things. So that's why this part is a very important thing for your operation. Okay, so that is I'm just reading is. So definitely this is not the whole book. The syllabus is 1/4. Can you please mention all the relevant chapters? I think I had mentioned to you, or maybe I'll just go back again. I'll tell you what all chapters are relevant. Okay, so because you understand, right? Because if I go through them, all of them, one by one, it will take plenty of time. Okay. Anyway, so you can just write this down. Chapter 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, I said this may not be so important. Then 6, then 7, 8.1, 8.1, and maybe 8.3 to some extent, but not so this one. Then 9, definitely 9 is important. So AVR interrupt programming in this, again, this is again important for doing little bit advanced things, but anyway, this is again important. This again is important for advanced things, but yeah, this is supposed to be important. Yeah, this is definitely important. And yeah, that's it. Others, I think you can do on your own. I2C SPI protocol, input capture, and I'll read out isolator. Yeah, so these things, once you have done with this, I think you can catch up with this. Okay, you can do these things, stepper motor interfacing, See, these are very, very useful things. See, once you're done with this, you can do ADC, you can read from sensors, you can actuate things, you can control motors, you can display things, right, on your own. Only when you, the moment you have some board with you, right, some processor board with you, you can do plenty of things. You can read data, right? You can communicate through I2C, you can do plenty of things here. So that is a thing actually, but the problem is this course itself is having many other things, so that is a problem. And please mention. So are you okay with this? Could you note down all these chapters that I mentioned, or maybe I'll just mention it here. Chapter 5, 6, 7, chapter 7. Okay. Chapter 0 to 7. Then hardware connections. Okay, 8.1, 8.1, 8.3, 8.1 and 8.3. Chapter 9, chapter 9, chapter 10, chapter 9, chapter 10. Yeah, this easier to some extent. 11.1. Yeah, these are again useful, but you can chapter 10 and chapter 13 and chapter 13. Okay. Does that answer your question? These are really important chapters, but other chapters you can find out. Okay, so LCD, you can display things. Serial program, you can communicate serially. So these are again important things, using interrupts and all. But I think you can catch up with these things once you are done them. So this is a practical thing. You have to actually practice, then only you'll be able to understand. So this is so once you do this, you have to actually get your hands engaged in some kind of processors, and then you can learn very fast. Okay. So yeah, so anyway, so for those people, I think those people who have at least studied chapter 3, I just understand that some people who are busy, so I'll just go through that. Let's see what we can cover. Yeah, so there is another call subroutine, which is telling you about the, yeah, it's just telling you that some you're just blinking some LEDs or a set a pair of LEDs which belong to some port A and 55, right? So A and 55 actually are complementary to each other. So in this way, what is happening is the one is 0101 and the other is 1010 and all. So because of which you are able to blink after some delay. So it's like there is a set of LEDs, and this is like 0101 and again 0101, and then after this will stay. The moment you put out here, it will stay, and because of which you do some after this delay. So this delay will again yeah, so this delay is again like a counter. So it starts with a counter, and then you keep on decrementing it, because of which you keep on passing some time. So this is nothing, this delay is nothing but some time pass. Okay, and after this time pass, you're keeping this set of LEDs on and off, or rather some LEDs you're keeping on and some LEDs you're keeping off, and that state remains as it is when you're doing this. Again, when you go back, again you do this 0 R16 0,6, and again put it in the same port P. So in this case, whichever pins were actually 0 will become 1, and whichever pins were 1 will become 0. So based on that, these there will be a toggling effect, and then again it will be kept in the same delay for some time. So it's like let's say that let's say every some pins are on, some pins are off, and they are in that same state for, let's say, some duration. Let's say let it be a half second, and then again after half second you again alternate the pins ones and zeros, and then they'll again become they'll again become zero, the complementary of that, and they'll stay in that manner. Okay, so yeah, so this is, so whenever we have this call, then only this you can observe that this stack pointer is getting updated. Now this is, since this is a 2-byte address, so that's why that's why you have this the stack pointer is getting updated by 2 points, by 2 memory locations. Okay, so 0008. So why is 0008 important? So 0008 is important because you when you did a call delay, you were actually the stack pointer was actually pointing to this memory location. So you stored it in the stack, and then you went ahead to the subroutine. So you executed this subroutine, and when you returned, you again read the value of the stack. The moment you read the value of the stack, you did a pop operation, and then the stack went back here. And then after reading, you knew that, okay, I need to go back to 0800 or 0008. Okay, so they are again, so first this is stored, then this is stored. So 0008. Okay, so this is the higher byte, this is the lower byte. So you'll again go back to, so you know that after you executed this call delay, you have to go back to this location. So that in this case, this is how the stack will store it. Again, after the second call, again it will get updated or not. So yeah, so you can also have calling many subroutines from the main program. So if you execute many subroutines from the main program, then so you call subroutine 1, then you call subroutine 2 and all. So see, there are, so the moment you execute it, you return. So based on that, these stack pointers will get updated very frequently, and then it will, if it is a nested call, then you'll have many locations being stacked up on the stack pointer. The stack pointer will keep on going up and up. That means if the memory locations will keep on decrementing, and once you're going back again, they'll be again popped one by one, and then those things will be read back, and again you'll go back to your original call. So this, you'll again keep on going back to your own main code. And obviously we saw that when you're executing this, the program counter during this execution is actually pointing to this. So this is this program counter will be saved, and the next time when it comes here, it will start from this line. Okay. So these are again relative call. It's similar to this relative jumps and all. So yeah, so this is again .org. I just trying to tell you that this address, this subroutine will start from this address. So this NOPs are nothing but new operation. They just eat away some time, like 1 cycle or so. So it is sometimes in some places it is very important to give some time, so that for initialization, or let's say that you have given some commands, suppose the operation takes some time to execute, and because of which it may take, so you're giving some time for execute, for some other things to settle down and all. So that's why you're giving this no operation thing. Okay, rewrite the main part of as efficiently you can. Yeah, so efficiently means that choosing the right commands, choosing the being careful about the delay and all those things. So here, yeah, so in this case, look at this, you're just using a direct complement R16, right? So look at R19, 3.9, what was happening in 3.9? Example 3.9, yeah, in 3.9. So you had this 5.5 and AA, and then you're loading it here and there. So you're using unnecessarily plenty of instructions here. but in this case, it's more compact here because you're using the right relevant instructions. So all you it's much more compact here, right? So you initially you started with 5 5, and then you just keep on complementing one by one. So 5 5 will become AA, and AA will again in the next complement it will become 5 5 again. So this is and this way you will see some blinking LEDs in your board. The LEDs will keep on alternate LEDs will keep on blinking. Okay, so this is just some kind of activity. So this you can see that you can use it for displaying certain things or trying to uh, yeah, it can be for many purposes. Maybe you can sound some alarm. So whatever is connected, it can be some LED or some alarm can be connected to the IO port or something. Anyway, it can happen. Chip for a product. Developer is using AVR microcontroller chip for a product has only this. Which of the instructions is more useful? This. So this is again about the how efficiently you can manage using how much bytes. Okay. So our call is useful here because it's a 2 byte instruction. So it will save some bytes here. And then you have this indirect call, and this similar to this indirect jump thing, in which you read the from the register the address to which you want to go to. You'll be loading it to the uh, uh, program counter. Okay, AVR time delay instruction pipeline or delay calculation for the AVR. So yeah, this is again important that how the delay calculation depends. It depends on the instruction cycle. The instruction cycle depends on the frequency of operation of the frequency of operation of the microcontroller or the microprocessor. That is one thing. The other is the inherent design of the AVR. So in this case, we saw that let's say it's a 1 megahertz processor. So each cycle time is around 1 microsecond. Okay, so you can find out that so instruction, let's say if instruction is one, if each instruction is one cycle, then it will take 1 microsecond. Okay, and then there are three things here. You can always it is depends on the AVR design, how it is designed. So one by one, how such as are able to execute instruction in one cycle. So you can see that how they can be executed in one cycle. There are a lot of efficient ways in which one is the Harvard architecture to get the maximum amount of code and data into the CPU. That means it is trying to tell you that because you have simultaneous access to code and data into the CPU, so you can you can fetch them parallelly, code and data, but that is the instruction code parallelly. So this way you can do some parallel operation. This way you can save some time. Similarly, using the RISC architecture features such as fixed type instructions. So many of the instructions are not only small, but they are fixed instructions. So because they are predictable, you can do some pipelining here. Okay, and use pipelining to overlap fetching and execution of instructions. And pipelining will be useful for so this will be helpful if you have fixed instruction. It will be helpful for doing this, and using pipelining you can do overlap fetch and execution. So this is again a very simplistic way of explaining that. Let's say that the processor can only execute one task at a time. So while the processor is executing, you can do some fetching. Let's say that you have already fetched one, then in the next instruction cycle, so the instruction cycle 1 instruction or machine cycle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and all. So once this has been already fetched, so you can execute it in the next cycle. But while you're executing, you can always fetch here. So it'll so for the outsider, it will look like in every cycle you're executing one instruction, right? Instruction 1 is being executed, but parallelly, because underlying there was some fetch operation also happening during the same time for the future instruction. So this looked as if all these executions are happening in each instruction cycle. So this is how you can so because this way, so there will be some queue, right? So because of which there will be some while it's being fetched, it will be in some queue, and while it is being executed again, so some other fetch too, some other instruction will be in queue. Okay. Let's see if you have any questions. What's an org directory? Yeah, so that's an assembler directory to start from zero. Yeah, so I said, yes, it may not be always zero. It can be others, like we saw it for 300 and all. It is the memory address from which you would like to start from. Okay, it may not be always zero. So it's the origin. Okay, so we start from zero memory address. So is this clear? Yeah, origin address, so which you want to start from. Okay. So we can use pipeline to speed up execution cycles. So because of this processing, because each of them more or less take the same time, within that fetch operation and all execution is more or less the same. That's why you're able to do it. It's like they've given some example of some slabs of break and all, which are exactly fitting. That's why you're able to do it. There are basically three operations: read operations, process, write back. But anyway, there will be a process. There will be things like decoding and execution and all those things. But anyway, so these are just explained in a. See, there are also underlying things, but they are just explained in a simplified manner. Okay. AVR multi-stage execution pipeline. So this is telling you in more details that in each of these execution instruction of one, these things are again involved. Like read the operand, process it. Process means again you convert that into, by processing means you'll decode it, and then you after execution decode and execute it, and then after you write it to some other register in the result, or to put it in some register. So these are all these things that are happening in all these cycles. So this will make you look like basically this is happening, all these things are happening in one instruction cycle. But in between, some parallel activities also go on. Yeah, so this is again very simple, but it will tell you that how each instruction cycle is. That let's say you have a 8 megahertz instruction cycle, sorry, processor. So this is that's why you need a very high speed processor for doing operations, right? Let's say that you use a 1 megahertz processor, the same instruction cycle will take 1 microsecond, whereas if you use a 8 megahertz processor or 16 megahertz processor, it will take much less time. So higher is the processing speed, higher is these instruction cycles. Okay. And then we know that each of these instructions take around 1 or 2 instruction cycles to execute. So this is again branch penalty. So there is be some delay because of the queuing factor now. So there will be a delay in instruction cycle. So that's why you'll get this branch penalty. That branch means when you're going from one branch not equal to something or something, you're going from one place to the other. So there will be some delay here. Okay, find how long it takes to execute each of the following. So these are, again, you have to go through these appendix, and from that you'll find out how much instruction cycle it takes. And mind, this is very again important. You'll find out that how fast is your code. Let's say you have written a code. Yes, so that is one of the benefit of using these assemblies. You can clearly understand that if you can break this, let's say C code to assembly code, and from the assembly you find out that underlying these are the instructions that are being used. You can clearly understand that how much instruction cycle they are taking. Okay, so based on that you can optimize your code, and also you'll come to know that how long it takes for it to operation. Because for real-time operation, let's say that I'm doing some filtering operation. Okay, I am reading from some sensor some value, some sensor value, and after the execution I am displaying it. Okay, so I should display every, let's say, every 1 millisecond, but in between I'm doing a lot of processing. Will my processing be over within that 1 millisecond? How will I know? Thanks to these instructions, I'll come to know that, okay, I'm using these instructions with with these instructions and these operands and all, and I know how these instruction cycles, how many instruction cycles they take. So all I need to do is add up these instruction cycles, and then from that I'll find out exactly how much time. Let's say that let's say that I'm using a chunk of code. which uses all these instructions, and then it uses these operands and all. So using this, I'll come to know that what is the total time taken for this piece of code. And then if I find out that, okay, it takes around, let's say for our condition, it takes more than 1.1 millisecond. Then I have to go back. I have to go back to the code and I have to redesign my code such that my code will take less than 1 millisecond, so that I'll be able to give the output within that 1 millisecond. Okay, so that is another beauty of using these assembly programs. We can understand clearly. We can clearly, it's all clear in front of your eyes, and it will be broken in front of you. How much time they take. Okay. Anybody has any experience? Okay. Yeah, I mean, okay. So anybody has any doubt till now? Anybody? Hello. Nobody has any doubt? Okay, I'll just ask somebody. Suman Datta, I'll just ask him. Do you have any doubt? Hello, are you attentive? Yeah, hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so do you have any doubt?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, your voice is breaking.
Sir, I have,
You have?
sir, I have read till chapter 1 only, so not much.
Oh my God. You have read till chapter 1. But
Yes.
it should not.
I'm currently on
Mhm.
chapter 2. Man.
You're on?
Currently on chapter 2 means before this class I was studying.
I understand. I understand you have a lot of load. You have too many classes. I understand, but what to do? We have to cover these courses.
Sir, I have one doubt.
Please tell me.
Sir, I just wanted to clarify, like this stack, the operations and the operands that are coming in the stack, is this similar to like converting operation into postfix and prefix?
Postfix and prefix. Okay, let us go back to the
I
stack diagram. Okay, let us go back to the
mean,
stack diagram.
this is something I read a while back in school, and is this the same thing?
Postfix
Postfix
and prefix.
prefix.
No, it's not. Prefix in what context?
So we converted expressions into postfix and prefix, right? So in that also, this is what we did. Like if we are given 1 plus 2, then we put like first we read 1, put it in the stack, then we read plus, we put it in a buffer, and then we read 2, we put it in the stack, and in the end we put plus, and then 1 and 2 are cleared to give 3.
Yeah, to give 3, it's not exactly like this. See, to give, are you talking about, see, there is an address associated with it. Okay, there is an address associated with it, and then there's an address associated with it, and then this works on the principle of last in first out. Is that what you mean? It works on the principle of last in and first out. Okay, that means the one that you have placed at the last will come out first. Okay.
Sir, I meant like where is the operator? The operator must be stored somewhere in the buffer, right? When two
Which
variables
operator
are
are you
put in
talking
there.
about? Which operator are you talking about?
I mean, when we put two pieces of data in two addresses, and we have to perform an operator. That's what we're doing in the stack, right?
No. You're not operating. No. 1 minute. You are just keeping it. Okay, for the time being. Okay, you're just keeping it. See, I'll just explain once again. See, let's say that.
Oh, this is while accessing. We are keeping it, and then first we'll access the top one.
Yeah, you just access the top one. We don't do our operation. We just keep it as it is. We just store it, because or else we'll forget. I'll just walk you through again. That let's say that I was executing this, right? and then I suddenly I say that I call display. Okay, I go for this call display. The moment I called for this display, I was actually pointing to the next address, right? So this address will actually be stored here. Okay, so this is actually being stored 0007. It is just kept as a heap, or it's just kept as a stack. It's just a name stack. It's just a memory location which is being used.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, sir.
Okay, and
I
then
got it. All the instructions are kept.
no, not instructions. The memory is kept. The memory location is kept, because I might forget, right? Because I'll return back. I know that after this call display, which is here, I'm going to return back. But where should I return? So after this return, the moment this return RET is invoked, I will read the latest value of the stack. Whatever the stack pointer was pointing to, I'll read it, and from there I'll extract it out. Okay, and that will be again placed to my latest value of the program counter, and then I'll start executing. So you got it. This is the flow. See, maybe we'll just forget this stack pointer for the time being. See, what am I doing? I'm executing, right? And I'll execute one by one, and then suddenly I am asked to go to this call display. It's a subroutine, so it is not part of this main program. It is some parallel, some other program which I might execute and come back again. So what I'm doing is I'll call this display. I'll transfer my program counter. Now the program counter will go to this display part. It will now come out of this main program, and it will start executing this, because for that I'm trying to execute this. After this execution, I'll again have to go back, right? So how do I find my way back? I need the address to where I should go back, right? So after this ret is invoked, I should go back. So that is where the stack will come into picture. The stack will contain
And
the
then we go down
address.
the stack.
Pardon? Yeah, the stack will go down. After this, the latest value of the stack, the latest value is on the top of the stack, right? I'll read from that stack value, and I'll say that, oh, I need to go back to 0007. So that is what that gives me the address to where I should go back. And using the are you getting? So after this ret value, I'll read this address of 0007, and I'll again start executing this, and again it will keep on going back.
Yes, sir.
So
I
this
got
is
it.
to preserve the continuity of that. Okay, so see, these are all automated things. Okay, so because these are the processor, the things for you it may seem very obvious, right? But for the processor, it is all very structured and methodical. Okay, so it has to be told where to go and what time. Okay, by default, it is always the program counter points to the next instructions, but this is something out of the way, right? It is branching out, and it is calling some other subroutine, and it has to go back again. So somebody needs to be the processor needs to be told where to go and where to return back. So that is where this stack comes into picture. So stack enables you to read the instruction, read the memory address, which will guide you to go back and all, because you may not remember it, right? Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's again based on the principle of last in, first out. So you'll come to know this will be important when you do a call within a call. Okay. So if you do a call within a call, then there'll be multiple. What is the diagram again? Yeah. So there'll be some multiple stacks. This stack will keep on growing, and if there are more and more call instructions, this stack will keep on growing. So you cannot directly go to the previous to the original to the first value of the call routine, right? So you have to go to the just immediate value of the call which called you. So that's why this is important. That's why it is last in, first out. That's why you're just reading. That's why you're just reading from the latest value that you had given. So this is the latest value. So that's why you'll read from this, and now you know where to go back to. Okay. So this will just give you the way back in a systematic manner. Okay. Yeah. So anybody else has some questions? Delay calculation for this. Yeah, and one more thing again, I'm saying this delay calculation is very, very important, because this will enable you to understand the execution time of your code. Okay, how much time you take, especially for real-time applications. As I mentioned that, let's say that your entire code should execute within 1 millisecond, you should get some output. But only through this, you will be able to accurately find out how many instruction cycles it will take. And there are some other ways of finding out also, but that will be in a rough manner. Okay, and then you'll find out exactly how much time it will take, and then based on that you can make a lot of important decisions. Okay, so this is again loop inside a loop delay and all. So suppose you can have, it's very similar, you can you can have a lot of delays here. So you're just producing numbers, so 200 multiplied by 250, and each of them will be having some knob. So knob will eat away one instruction cycle. So this is just to kill time actually. Suppose you want to delay something, you want to give some output after some time delay. So this will give you the accurate value of the delay, because you know that this is accurate. You can trust this value of instruction cycle, right? It will for a 1 megahertz, it will be 1 microsecond. So you can find out exactly, you can even generate a accurate delay here from this. Okay, so this is again a, even though it looks very simple, you can yeah. So now second is yeah, these are again very common sense kind of things, like the again loop and all. So let's say that let's say that you're going back again and again. Every time you go back again, so certain number of instructions are executed. But the moment you go, you don't go back again here. So you'll be consuming less. You'll be consuming less. You'll be consuming less instruction cycles. So that's why there is a subtraction of 1. Okay, so that's why you can say this. So this is again, this is for accurate estimation of the execution time of your code. Okay, which you can do confidently because you're doing in assembly. Okay, so this is again these instruction cycles which will help you to understand. So these are again self-explanatory. Please go through these examples. You'll find out how these things are there. Yeah, yeah. Assuming there is frequency every 1 second. So again, so here the problem is about this part, right? Let's say that we want to toggle all the bits of input-output register port B every 1 second. So the problem is about this, how to generate this much delay, because the processor inherently is a very high-speed processor. It executes very fast. So the time duration is typically very small. So how to do this? Again, you have to talk about these registers and all. So that's what you're doing. So 200, 250 and all. So you know that 32 multiplied by 200 multiplied by 250, and these are the instructions execution times. You'll get 1 million nanoseconds, which is 1 second. Okay, so these are just very common sense kind of things. You can do this. Okay, so with this we can more or less cover chapter 3. Anybody has any doubt on chapter 3? Anybody? Hello?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, if you don't define the stack at the beginning of the program, will that call function run?
Yeah, that's a very important. It'll crash actually. It may not start actually, because you'll try to store it, right? So that's why it is essential to initialize the stack pointer. Define means initialize the stack pointer, right? Hello.
Okay.
Huh? So that is why it is essential, because by default it is kept at 0. By default, when it starts up, everything is initialized to 0. So you have to put it at some higher value. So like I said, it may not be always RAM end. It can be some large value. So that the large value minus something minus something minus something, it will not cause it to have problems. So that's why it is always good practice to initialize the stack pointer, okay, to some large value.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other question? Okay, so I think I'll just cover chapter 4 also. IO port programming in AVR. Okay. There are many ports for IO operations. Okay, so input output ports are very, very important. We saw that, right? let's say that in each of the ports, let's say uh, this is for ADCs, but I'm talking about the digital input output. Okay, so they can be multiplexed also. Let's say in this case, port number B or so, let's say here, let's say they are multiplexed with other pins, but that means they have dual functionality. Okay, like they work in different modes at different time. You must have heard of Jekyll and Hyde and all that kind of thing, that they have the same pin, the same physical person, but he has two different personalities. So it's like that. So you multiplex them. But anyway, we're coming to more serious things. Let's say that you have 4 ports. So typically for Atmega32, you have this 4 ports are there, and you want to, let's say that each of them are connected, right? So these ports can be connected in terms of input output ports or something. Let's say that this is connected to some LED, it will blink some LED, and similarly maybe this is connected to some alarm or something. So this will be connected in output mode. Okay, so you can do those things. Actually, you can configure them in input mode or output mode, and they are very useful. See, just one pin, they can with some driver or something, you can drive some, let's say from here you can drive 8 LEDs, or you can do other things also. Let's say it is connected to some relay. Suppose you have to turn on and off some circuits. Okay, you can turn off, let's say 8 circuits, or you can turn on turn on 8 circuits using these pills. So all they will do is either they'll give 1 or 0. So based on 1 or 0, some relay can get off, or they can get on, and then it may be part of some other circuit. So they will have a lot of implications here. Okay, it may look very simple that it is just doing 1 or 0, but the implications are far more powerful, much more powerful, in the sense that, yeah, in the sense that you can have a lot of functionalities here. Okay. So what are they saying? Your 4 ports are designated as, let's say VCC is the supply, this is the ground, these are the crystal connections for frequency reset, and this is the analog reference, this is the analog ground. Analog reference and analog ground are required for the ADCs, okay, analog to digital converter. So what do? They convert from real world continuous signals, analog signals, to digital signals. Okay, so that's what, so these are the pins through which you have to connect. Let's say you're measuring, you're taking some temperature, you're taking some voltage, you're taking some so obviously the temperature will be some voltage, and then you're measuring some pressure, temperature, all these things you can there. So what it will do is it will convert them into digital values, and then it will start processing. Okay, so this is for reference. This will give that voltage to these ADC module, and this is the ground of that ADC module. Okay, and their functions. So it depends on the number. So based on the how much pin configuration, we can have different numbers of ports. Okay, so port A, port B, port C, port D, and all. Okay, different pin configurations, 28 pin, 64 pin, 100 pin configuration. So there'll be a little bit, the ICs will be different, larger. So this is for, we are mostly, I think, is Atmega32, so it is mostly 40 pin. Okay, so here I think, yeah, so this port A, so there are 3 registers. So each of these registers are mapped to these 8 pins. So these groups are called these ports, the group of pins. The 8 group of pins, they are 8. They are called ports, and they are mapped to these. Their individual pins here. They are physically visible in the processor and the microcontroller. And then inside they'll have these. They'll have these 3 registers associated with it. Okay, I'll just check whether anybody has any questions.
So what does the XTAL one do?
Crystal. It is connected to the crystal for generating pulses, frequencies. Okay. It will be connected to the crystal for generation of high frequency pulses, 1010 pulses. Okay, I think I've mentioned.
Because I think all of them had 8. All of them had 8 pins except the D one. So XTAL, the crystal will come inside those.
No, I told you example. I told you, give some example, right? So this can be used as an input output. It can be used for this clock also. This is, you're talking about this one, or which one are you talking about? Here you're talking about this one, right? No, not this one. External one. This will be connected to the. This is the clock. Okay, this is for clock. But here, this will be connected to this crystal. Okay, this crystal will be, along with the oscillator. They will they will generate these pulses, 1010 pulses, which are required to run the processor. Okay. So they'll have some natural frequency. There will be some natural frequency of the crystal. I think that was taught to you, right, in the introduction class. So so there will be some natural frequencies, and then it will generate these accurate clock pulses of high low, on off duration. It will be accurate. So that is why these pins are there to connect some external crystal. Okay. There are plenty of here, and this is for interrupts. Is it clear? Hello.
Yes.
I think, yeah, it is taught. It was taught in the introduction. I think for that there are different components, hardware components. So this will be for generation of these frequencies. This this frequency that you see, right? Which are I mentioned, they're like the heartbeat of the processor. They have to be these pulses, these timing pulses have to be generated. So that's what they do. Okay. Now coming back to this. So you have these 3 registers associated with each port. So as I mentioned, this port is a group of these 8 pins. Mostly they have 8 pins. Some port might have 7 pins for Atmega 8. Okay. So but for higher configuration, they have mostly 8 pins. And for the 8 pins, these registers are mapped to these pins. Okay. Let's say that PB. This is port B. This is port A. Yeah, this is port D. This is port C. So these are all 8 pins. And this group is called the port, and they are mapped to these 3 registers, which will be helpful for controlling these pins. Okay, and then what is port A is? Port A is mostly for the output usage. That means you want to display something. You have to give output of this. You have to give output in the output mode. So they can these pins I've told you, they can operate in input mode or output mode. Input means it'll be reading. That means, let's say that you are giving from externally, you're giving some signal, or you're giving some connection, some circuit is connected here. It can read from that. It can read from here. So that's in the read mode. So that's why you have this pin mode. Pin A mode. For the A part, this is the pin A mode. So it will be the input mode. Then port A is for yeah.
So you said that the port A register bits can be controlled using those pins.
No. There is a register. The software, you have to write that, and you have to give those values, and they'll get mapped into that. Okay, so it will be through some software. The software will write that bit pattern 101011 or something like that. Okay, and then I'll come to that. So that will happen when it is in this mode. So as I told you, that it can be either in output mode or input mode. So how is that configured? It is done by this DDRA, or this direction register is there. Okay, and through these DDRA and all, you can set the pins whether they'll behave in input mode or output mode. That means input means whether they'll read this input output digital signal, or they'll output these values. That means, let's say you write inside the software, you write 10101010 also. So similarly, this will become 101010. So that will be, so this register itself is actually mapped to these pins, and now it will get it will be in the output mode. That means the output, if you measure this, if you measure through some multimeter, you'll get some value of 5 volts or something, and then 0 volt, 5 volt, 0 volt, 5 volt. So that kind of thing. Okay, so that can be done through this software configurable this thing. Okay, so all you have to do is write into these register. If you write into this port A register, that is for output purpose only. Okay, and then you'll get, let's say, as I said, or else you can just write FF here. So FF is nothing but 11111111. So output, you'll get all ones here. So ones means all of them will show some 5 volt, 5 volt, 5 volt, 5 volt. You'll see that. Okay, you can measure it. So that's how it will do. Similarly, if you put it in direction is 0. So if this DDRA is 0, let's say that all of them are DDR for this is all of them are zeros. then all of them will read it. They'll be in the read mode. They'll not give any output. They'll be waiting for some external signal to come, and they'll try to read whatever is this thing. So they'll read it into this pin A register, which is again an 8-bit register. Similarly for all the other ports, port B, port C, port D. Okay, so these are all very similar. Okay, so these are, so as I said, DDR is for configuring any bit or set of bits which is within that port, within that port A register, so that they will behave in the input mode or output mode. Similarly, this pin A is for reading. This is again a register which will read the content of these pins into the register. Similarly, this port A is for output purpose. Okay, so the moment you write something into it, this port A register will get mapped into this pin, and then you'll see these displays of one voltage. Not display means in these voltage of high voltage is VCC, which is let's say 5 volt or 3.3 volt or something. They'll appear here. Okay, so this is a very simple, nice way of explanation. These are the pins. See, this is the pin for pin 7, pin 6, and pin 0, and these are some of the positions of these. These are the registers. So you can configure these pins by writing into these registers. So your software, the program that we are seeing, right? So you have, all you need to do is just give some bit pattern of something, and then based on that, those operations will occur. So DDR register role in outputting data can be used for input or output. The DDR register is used only for the purpose of making a given port an input or output port. So either you configure it as input port or output port. Okay, so we must first put into DDR register to make all of the pins output. So this yeah.
So till when will we have the class today?
Do you have a class after this?
No, sir, but it's pretty late probably for most of us at home also.
Yeah, I understand. So yeah, so this is again somebody is based on the request that people have, right? So I know there was some delay because of some hanging issue here, so that is a problem actually. So do you want to continue on Monday, because again, because there are other professors who will take after I do this, because my portion is covering till these chapters. So the less time I have, the less time I'll have to explain this. Are you getting what I'm trying to say?
Yes, sir. Maybe you could ask for people's opinion right now.
Yeah. So who all wants to continue? Or rather, who don't want to continue? Because I just wanted to complete this chapter 4, because people said that it's completely based on the people's requirement, right? That they were they wanted to have a gist of summary of what it is, so that because they are not getting time to read the chapters. So that's what I'm saying. So there is one person, he says he doesn't want, out of 50 people, 50 odd people. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. I don't see any other hands.
Sir is getting that for me. Frustration.
What? So why don't you raise your hand, then I'll come to know. So 2 hands are there. Okay, 3 hands, 4 hands, 5 hands. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, majority there are less hands. But anyway. So what I'll do is I'll just okay, so Sunday you'll have you're free, right? Sunday you can study, right? Sunday, maybe tomorrow, and Monday some part you can study, right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, then I would suggest that I had asked you to read till chapter 5. Then I suggest to read till chapter 6. Okay, since you'll have some time on Sunday. Okay, so see, I'm just trying to manage here. I hope you're trying to understand my situation. I'm trying to manage here because plenty of things have to be taught here. Plenty of things, and but today's class was till 9:30. Okay, it was till 9:30. But in this case, and we have to cover a lot of things here. Okay, then only we can do some interesting things. And your understanding of this is very important. So fine, then Monday we'll talk about till chapter 6. I'll expect doubts till chapter 6. If you want, I can explain certain sections of it, but explaining all of them will take a lot of time, which is not possible because other professors will also teach other courses which are relevant to embedded controls and software. So can you read till chapter 6? Who says no? Those of you who cannot read till chapter 6, please let me know. I just want to understand how many people cannot read. Or else I'll assume that.
Sir, I will try to read till 4.
Till 4. How much have you read till now?
Sir, till 2 I have read, but I have one assignment which I have to submit by tomorrow, by Monday.
Okay. So till now 11. So 11 out of 50, or to say 12 people, 14 people.
But after Monday I could read it.
After Monday means, see, I won't be able to take more classes. Okay, because there are there are 4
Classes, I
professors
can cope
teaching.
up with the missing parts.
So again, what I'm trying to tell you is these are very, very important things. You can directly develop embedded control systems by using this knowledge. This is a very practical oriented course. So that's why I wanted to focus on this. So, and given the limited time we have, okay. So out of 50, around 19 people have said, or 20 people have said. So fine. So I'll just fine. I'll ask you to read till chapter 6. Let's see how much whatever people can do. Let's see. We'll try to cover. Okay. So chapter 6. I'll just mention it in the chat window. So read till, because you have Sunday, so you have plenty of time till chapter 6, and we'll see. And if people have some doubts, or maybe so what I'll do is, if people have some doubts on chapter 6 or something because they could not get some enough time to read chapter 6, maybe I'll clarify or explain certain parts of it. Okay, got it? Okay, so read till chapter 6, and I'll be expecting some doubts and all. Okay. Yeah, so the idea is for you to go through each and every point, and these examples also, which are very important. Okay. Okay. So since you don't want me to continue, many of you, so I think your dinner time is there. So goodbye. Good night. We'll meet on Monday again. Yeah? Bye.